Hello and welcome to Los Angeles Sex Therapy Team Video Interview Series founded by Moushumi Ghose, AMFT. And in this series, we introduce you to our therapists and coaches so you can get to know them on a more personal level by seeing them, hearing their voices, and learning more about their unique approaches to this work. I'm your host, Jamie Azar, sex, relationship, and intimacy coach at Last and founder of Erotic Expressions. And today we're joined by Jessica Hyatt, who will be sharing insights into their philosophy and the way they support clients. Welcome, Jessica, and thank you so much for being with us here today.
Hi, thanks for making this video. I'm excited about this series and to let people get to hear a bit about me in my voice, because it's just not the same as a blurb, is it?
It isn't the same. So we're so glad you're a part of this and that people will get to know you on a more personal level. So I'm so curious, what inspired you to become a sex therapist in the first place?
Well, I'll tell you that when I started my own therapy journey, I was so nervous about finding a therapist who would be affirming, because I had been alternative pretty much my whole adult life. And I really was afraid that someone was going to be very judgmental of the way that I structured my relationships. And I wasn't going to be able to get help with the depression, with the grief, the other things that were bothering me. And finding an affirming therapist was so supportive to me personally. And I gained things in terms of how I thought about myself and the way I was kind to myself that I didn't think were really possible. When people talked about the idea of self-love, that sounded almost kind of fake. But as I went through my own treatment, I really found out what therapy could do and had a bit of a transformation. And there was a point where I said, oh, I really want to come and deliver this to other people. And at that point, I had been polyamorous for a long time and also doing kind of community education and community support in those spheres, as well as activism around sex worker communities for some time. So it felt like this bridge between the therapeutic practice and these other areas of like activism and community work and education. They're already weaving together for me.
Yeah. And what would you say your definition is of an affirming space, or how do you create that for the folks who come through your doors or into your office or who work with you?
I think there's two main pieces of an affirming space that come to mind. One is this just kind of not just non-judgment, but truly celebrating these unique, different approaches and ways of thinking about their identity or the relationships that people bring in. And the second actually just is fluency. I know more things about what a medical transition would involve for a trans person, or more things about what a kink dynamic could look like and the vast differences of roles there than another therapist who, while possibly accepting, just doesn't have like the level of fluency and knowledge to really be able to meet someone without their client having to educate them a bit. And while that's fine, some people really like to be in a space with someone who kind of already knows more than the basics. So those are the two big elements that I think are important.
I love that. And like you said, not just the acknowledgement and non-judgment and but the celebration of people's identities and affirming them in that and really celebrating it. I love that. I see that, sounds like it's part of your unique approach to working with clients, celebrating folks, and also the fluency and your knowledge and background when it comes to different areas of expertise. What would you say are some of your other unique approaches to working with clients?
I'd say the biggest thing on the ground of my approach is that it's embodied and collaborative. And to me, this means that I'm bringing in embodiment throughout, including both embodied tools that might support someone and just even tracking what's happening in your body as you're experiencing emotions and sharing things in session as a tool to better understand yourself and a tool to better be able to soothe and care for yourself. Just that basic piece of knowing the body can be so cut off in our culture. People don't have access. We're just like cut off right here, myself included. I've been on this journey to find my way back to connection and learn how to truly listen to my body and not see myself as a separate mind and body, like I'm piloting some kind of a big mech, but as this whole holistic person. And then the other piece I said was that it's collaborative. I know certain types of embodiment do not work for everyone. Some people have tried breathing exercises and they only make them more anxious. Some people are so tired of being told to go on a walk for their depression. And some people, a lot of people I see, are neurodivergent, and certain types of tools that exist don't quite work for them or need a little tweak. So I think of myself as being someone who's always out there crafting bespoke tools for the uniqueness that people are bringing into my room, and going back and forth, really, truly curious about experimenting and seeing what works and being open to finding out that something I've offered really doesn't, and building and crafting a therapy that works for their unique mind body.
Yeah, I'm so curious too about, I love what you said about the experimentation, the exploration, the curiosity, the collaboration that you create with your clients. And I'd be curious to know what some of those other ways or of embodiment that you've cultivated or suggested with, for example, folks who are neurodivergent, or where walks or certain mindfulness practice or techniques don't work for them. Like, how do you discover those together, like in the co-collaboration, or do you experiment in session with some of these embodiment practices? How do you guide people who have maybe never even like heard of embodiment or really understand what that means? Like, where do people start with this, and how do you help them enter into that work?
That's a great question. I always start by finding out what they already know and what they've already tried, because I don't want to be redundant. If someone's heard something a million times or seen a bunch of TikToks on it, tried it, and already feels self-conscious or criticized because it hasn't worked for them, or maybe they're doing it wrong, I don't want to create that. So we just start out with, what do you already know? And often, because we have so much available on the internet and people talk about wellness, there are all these buzzwords about it, people already know something, and they've already seen what ways it works for them and what ways it doesn't. So I always start there with what they know. And then after that, often as I'm adding new things, we will experiment with it for the first time in session. So we can be there to troubleshoot, maybe if there are some ways that they're doing it that isn't working for them, and process the feelings about it. Feelings of inadequacy in themselves for the way that it's going. Feelings of annoyance with me. That's fine with me. Therapy's a little goofy, and sometimes I ask you to do silly stuff. And just really being there in the moment to sort of see what comes up together, instead of having someone go off on their own without someone to contain and support them, is really important to me. So a lot of it does happen live in session if we can, if it's something that's appropriate to do that for. Now with sex therapy, some of the things aren't appropriate to do that for, so it'll be homework and we'll come back and process after.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And I know that trauma-informed therapy is very much a part of your work as well, in addition to embodiment and somatic pieces and presence and mindfulness you're describing, and just developing more emotional awareness. I'm curious what trauma-informed therapy means to you. We hear the term a lot. So what's your definition or relationship with the work?
Yeah, it is such a buzzword. People say it all the time. I don't think all of them even know what they mean by it, because it is something that's so thrown around. And I really am a sex therapist and a trauma therapist. Those are my two main areas of working. And to me, part of what makes work trauma informed is this sense of collaboration. And people who've experienced trauma lots of the times didn't have control over what was happening to them or their bodies, and were told to do things or experience things that they just simply couldn't get out of or couldn't control in some way. So I don't want to be recreating any of that experience in the way that my therapy works. So that means that I'm going to collaborate every step of the way, and I'm going to go slow. When I'm asking people questions, even about their trauma history, I always make it really explicit that those questions are optional, that they can answer at their own pace with just a newspaper headline of what happened, or even say, I really want to skip that right now, because I don't assume that I immediately have safety with someone in the room just because I carry the title of therapist. I know safety and trust are built. And especially when dealing with trauma, it may take a while. And I'm just willing to have that patience, to have that curiosity, and to let a person truly have consent and maybe have control for the first time of a space that they're in.
Yes, I can feel that you create that, and like that last piece that you said about your clients finding the consent in the process, their agency and autonomy in that process, of revisiting their history and disclosure, and finding perhaps empowerment and autonomy, right, in consent and control, like you said, for the first time. And so, wow. So what I'm hearing from you is it's very much a co-collaborative process of, and honoring the time it takes to establish trust and safety with someone, and giving them the space and time to find the agency, autonomy, and consent in how they navigate their own healing, and their process with you in the room.
Yeah, patience and consent are key to creating a trauma-informed space.
Yeah. What's one misconception, Jessica, you would say about sex therapy that you'd like to clear up for folks?
Misconceptions abound, but a top one that comes up for me is this misconception that in sex therapy, we're only going to be talking about sex and dating and intimacy. I have clients regularly apologize to me because we've spent a session talking about finances with your partner. And then I check in with them and say, well, does how finances are going with your partner affect your sex life and your feelings of intimacy towards each other? And at that point, they'll often laugh and say that yes, it really does. And there are so many other things that people end up needing to talk about to unravel what might be going on for them with sex and intimacy. Things that are going on in the political landscape, experiences of oppression, things that happen with their family of origin that might not have been sexual or sexual trauma, but really affect their interpersonal dynamics. You know, I think one of the biggest ones ends up lots of times being systemic or political things. There are so many stories out there about sex. There's so much stigma. There's so much pressure to fulfill roles. So I guess I just want to let people know that in sex therapy, while you might be working on things around sex, intimacy, and dating, that's not all you're going to talk about. And actually, I really invite getting that broader picture.
I'm smiling because through these interviews, I think that's been the main misconception that practitioners have wanted to clear up. And it's so fascinating and fun. And I think revealing that, again, we can be exploring these other facets of life, right? And relationships like finances that may not be directly, we think, related to sex, but they are, right? And so sex is so much more than just what we do in the bedroom, right? And exploring all those different facets of the way we relate in our relationships and the way we show up. So absolutely. I'm curious for you, Jessica, what's something that you absolutely love about the work that you do?
I have so much love for just getting to hold space for people. It feels hard to pick a thing that I love, but my favorite part, if I had to pick, is watching people over time stop judging themselves. I talked about my own non-judgment, but people come in with so much baggage about how they should be, how they should perform. People come in feeling really broken and taking on a lot of things for themselves that might be related in some ways to other people or systems or things. And watching people start moving towards places of greater kindness to themselves is so magical. You know, even people who have experienced, horrible trauma as a child that we would never blame them for. People blame themselves really heavily, and watching people start to take off some of those layers of blame and judgment and take a little bit off of their shoulders so that they can move is so special when you sit with someone and say, wow, 6 months ago, this would have been very different. But now you're able to be kind to yourself. You're able to do this thing that was so frightening before. That just feels really good.
Mm-hmm. What would you say helps give your clients permission to do that throughout the work that they do with you?
Really, to take apart the self-judgment, a lot of it is looking at those bigger societal stories and noticing, oh, this isn't mine. This was given to me or put on me from someone else. I'd say another piece is self-compassion work. I lean heavily on the self-compassion and things Kristen Neff has written about. Instead of self-esteem, where we have esteem for ourselves because we've done something good or something good about us, self-compassion lets us just be kind to ourselves simply for being a human and existing. People make mistakes sometimes, have a hard time, and lots of times if I can help people unlock the compassion and gentleness for themselves that they already know how to have for other people, pieces start to move.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing. What do you want clients to feel after a session with you?
I have to say, when I saw this question at first, I was befuddled. I was like, well, they're going to feel whatever they feel. We have some sessions that are hard and people feel tender coming out. Some sessions that are really inspiring and people feel galvanized and energized coming out. But I'd say the through line for me is that I'd love for people to feel anchored in their bodies. Whatever it is, where we've gone, that they feel like they're anchored into feeling that thing in their bodies, like they're not dissociated or far away or just in the state of like overwhelm where they can't be in their body. I hope that I find a place at the end of session to land with people where they can just be rooted in whatever they've noticed or learned about themselves or whatever they've processed through with me in that time.
Yeah. And I'm curious if you find that there are certain people who find you for this work, or there are certain areas or specialties you'd like to kind of emphasize, if people are looking for this type of support to, it sounds like, come back into their bodies and find groundedness, embodiment, safety, non-judgment, self-compassion.
You know, I do a ton of work with trans folks and neurodivergent folks, which is a bit of a Venn diagram. There's quite a bit of overlap. I find that people who are neurodivergent often have different ways of relating to their bodies and stimulation and embodiment that has not been properly adapted for or supported in other therapeutic spaces, even really well-meaning ones. And also, people who are neurodivergent often have been judged for the differences in the way that their neurotype shows up in the world and have internalized that as a lot of self-judgment, are in need of self-compassion. So it really combines well with the things that I do. And I love being able to tailor things to them and celebrate where we can those differences that may have been a source of some social stress growing up or feeling on the outside in various spaces.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, well, thanks for sharing all of that. To wrap us up here, I'm curious, we'll end on a fun note here, a fun personal flavor. Is there a hobby you have, a passion, or a fun fact that you'd like to share that shapes who you are?
I am the ADHD queen of hobbies. I'm just buried in a pile of hobbies and crafts and things around my house. But I think a hobby that reveals a bit about who I am and has kind of shaped who I am is my interest in gaming. I play video games, I play tabletop role-playing games, and I love the process of getting to learn about myself from the stories I tell and the characters I play and the journeys that they go on when I'm doing tabletop role-playing. And sometimes it ends up weaving into the treatment I do with clients. If I end up finding out that a client is a gamer, I'll start using game metaphors. We'll be talking about leveling our skill trees. We'll be talking about helping your trans partner come out, being a way that you can sort of tank damage for them because it's hard for them right now and they're a little squishy. If anyone out there is playing video games and listens to that, they'll know what was up. Otherwise, I was just saying gibberish. But I love getting to use those metaphors and weave those in. It is part of how I think about my own life, is often with these sort of gaming metaphors, because it turns the strange, nebulous experience of being into the world into structures and levels and frames that help things make a little bit more sense.
I love that, and I can see you lighting up as you talk about that, and I can absolutely feel, you know, the way that you meet your clients exactly where they are, and the safety and the non-judgment and the celebration you bring to your sessions, and the work that you bring to both mind and body work as well, the somatics of it all. And I know that you also run a support group, an embodiment support group. Do you want to share any information about that?
I don't think I have anything prepared to say about that right now.
Okay. Yeah, well, perfect. Anything else you'd like to share with folks, or anything you're feeling called or invited? Last final words to anyone?
I just have to say the process of sharing about all of this made me feel so warm and made me think about all of my clients and how much I hope that they can appreciate themselves in the way that I appreciate them, because they really are so cool and so lovely, and I want all of the healing in the world for them. If they ever see this, or if anyone is seeing this about to become my client, know that I will hold you in so much tenderness. Just the act of talking about those made me feel so warm.
Well, thank you for saying that and sharing it. And I can feel it from you as well. And it's just been a pleasure learning more about you and your work. And thanks everyone for being here today. We will link Jessica's page from Los Angeles Sex Therapy in the captions of this video, so you can click on that link to learn more about her, reach out to work with her, book a consultation. And we hope you've enjoyed this episode, and stay tuned for our next guest, where we come back for our next video live series. So thank you for tuning in. And Jessica, thank you again so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time.